Keeping up with the Comrades corruption. Continue with our daily corruption or daily soap, your daily reality TV show of the African National Congress. The whole 2 weeks is just being story after story after story with corruption of the African National Congress. And it's hard to keep up with the corruption. It's like the corruption competition to see who's the most corrupt to make it to the top of the super corrupt. And you can see William Abe is getting old, it's getting old. It's like American presidents, you see them after 5 years, they change the hairlines, the hair color, the face, they just change, getting old. Because he's doing the rounds in all forms of media, television, radio, putting out fires of ANC's corruption. Tough stuff. And on the other side, you have a majority of the lamestream media not actually interrogating and doing the investigation when it comes to the corruption of the other faction of the ANC. Normally, the lamestream media focuses on the Mahashule faction and not the CR17 faction when it's has to do with corruption. Right about now, at least the independent publications are also highlighting the corruption on the CR17 camp. The likes of investigative journalist Bertram Betty, his expose that came through a couple of days ago. I think it's 2 weeks, plus minus 2 weeks, about the husband of the spokesperson of the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa, Mr. Diko, 125 million tender for the communist virus, PPE, supplies, and so forth. And I remember the gentleman refuted the story, saying that he then stopped. He then immediately realizing that this could just be a conflict of interest, and he said, you know what, I'm not gonna deliver or render my services to the government. I've stopped. And a week later, you can see Bertram Betty came in, and now he's talking on his article. He's speaking of a front company of which Mr. Diko had a couple of millions on it. And now it's so funny that these factions of ANC now are at each other's throats, because all of them are corrupt, and as a result, it's like they're jogging in feeding the information as to who's more corrupt. On the other side, the Cyril Ramaphosa factions are then being exposed by the Mahashule's faction, vice versa, right in front of our eyes. And you can see that the infestation of corruption of the African National Congress now, with this communist virus that has hit us together with the rest of the world. Normally, you would see all these corruption stories of the African National Congress unfolding in a nice snail pace way, deriving from yearly budget that comes out where uh, Joe, Peter, or whomever would then have a tender of which there were no bidding, and then you see it later on in the news and so forth. But with the Chinese virus, the blessing in disguise about this is that the PPEs are required now. Okay? So as a result, it's something that has to be done within a space of a year. And each and every month we have to have the gloves, we have to have the masks, we have to have those personal protection equipment. So as a result, the diverted 260 billion came out quickly, and then now government contracts, also known as tenders, are to be issued out now. So as a result, each and everyone has to extend their hands out and say, hey, okay, I want to get this tender. So you're seeing corruption happening at a rapid space in front of our eyes, and I mean lack of sensitivity by the, well, we all know, I mean the members don't have conscience anymore. I beg your pardon, they've been voted over each and every year, and when you start to talk to them, they'll tell you that we've built such and such number of RDP houses, there were no running waters, we've given you running water. We have changed a couple of legislations. There's ample freedom going on. And let us not focus on negativity. Let's focus on positivity. So now you got the ANC Secretary, Mahashula's sons having the communist virus tender as well. Couple of millions. And then you have the daughter of Miss Rent Pickupper, Nombula Mukonyana, getting couple of hundreds and thousands towards the north of million. Then you have on the CR17 faction, obviously you have his son also having a scheme of inputting sort of a ventilation equipments into the taxis, in the taxi industry now. Although it's been said that he's having a deal with the First National Bank. Given the Busasa story, you would think that it's something that he was not supposed to be engaged in, but there you have it. So, in this National Executive Committee meetings, I mean, you can just see that both factions are now just at each other's throat. And we're just seeing this unfolding. Unfortunately, the exposure and the reality and lack of conscience by the African National Congress, it just had to be expressed during the pandemic. This is a pandemic. This is the time where if there's anyone who's got a little bit of one spoon of conscience would say, you know what, this is a pandemic. In my lifetime, I will never have to experience this. Hopefully, we last had another pandemic over 100 years ago. Almost none of us here on this planet had lived at that time. If there's anyone, then they would probably were like 1 year old all the way to 5 years, something like that. So technically, no one has ever seen this and will never see this, hopefully again in our lifetime. So this is where someone would say, this is a pandemic. We have to treat this as such, as the factions of the governing political party. Let's not be at each other's throats this time. Let's deal with this Chinese virus by servicing our people and so forth, instead of stealing the money, stealing the food parcel that are supposed to go to the people who are needing it the most. But no, it's continuing. Steam forward going corruption with no shame. And this is not going to stop, obviously. And you can see with political parties and factions and the patronage, I mean, they are required, as everyone is rotten, they are required so that tomorrow when you're getting taken to court, then with all the money that you've stolen from corruption, then you'll be able to go to court and hopefully get a better sentence, you know? Or if not, win in court because you'll then be amassing amount. So this is just what's happening and it's playing in front of us. Unfortunately, the opposition parties didn't play their role. The economic freedom fighters sat in their homes when all this started and said that we're going to be trusting the president, we're going to be telling our people to go sit in their houses and not go to churches, and not drink alcohol, and in fact alcohol shouldn't be uh, sold anymore. People shouldn't go to companies and work because then that would be supporting the so-called white monopoly capital. So let the white monopoly capital dies. Let's nationalize the private hospitals, you know, nonsense like that. So as a result, the governing party became rampant. There were no checks and balances. There were no parliamentary sessions because everybody's sitting in their home. We're trusting the angels of the task teams with their wings and to fly in each and every house at night and protect us from the communist virus. And then later on, when things went haywire, that's when the economic freedom fighters comes out. And one thing that you can see now with the ANC, I mean, this is a very beautiful campaigning strategy for the next year's local elections, for 2024 national elections, because strategically, I mean, each and every month, the president comes out, gives a speech, add whatever ANC political agenda he wants to add, given the wind, that's the kind of wind that's blowing in the nation. If it's the gender-based violent wind that's blowing, he would then come up, talk about the communist virus. After talking about communist virus and communist pandemic, and then he would say, gender-based violence against our women is also the next pandemic that we're having. We're having two pandemics in our republic, and we're not going to leave no stone unturned until we deal with this problem. The Department of Education, Department of Health, Department of Agriculture, Department of Kindergartens, and Department of Landscaping, Department of Cloud Seeding, whatever, tomorrow will then address each and every categories. And sure enough, if we're lucky, our overlords, the rulers, not the public servant, will come through, and then each will then answer the question and giving answers to the peasants. If it's the Minister of Police, then he will come through and talk about how we have kept crime because everybody is at home and there are no violence is over in the spilling it in the street. And then Department of Social Development would come up and say, here's that hotline again. We have stopped violence in the streets because people are not getting drunk, shooting, stabbing each other, and having car accidents. But in the now that the couples are in the house and the husbands are beating up their wives or the boyfriends beating their girlfriends, this is the number that you can call us. We love you. We're the government. We're going to take care of you. And this cycle continues and continues and continues and continues, and then takes the oxygen out of the room of or the opposing or the opposition parties. On the other side, the DA also is they're having their own problems. There was a humiliation of a man whom the police grabbed him out of his shack with no clothes on. Brutal, brutal. And that was something that was latched on, obviously, by the ANC, the EFF as well. And the DA also is busy having their little infighting and complications about the upcoming conferences and their leadership elections, which is coming through. They're having arguments about whether they should go there in person in terms of the conference or doing it online, and also fantasizing about electronic elections where everybody's going to be voting online. The craziest thing that I've ever had is the same thing that you're seeing there in the States with the Democrat Party talking about mailing ballots voting. If there's anything that doesn't need technology in this day and time, it's a vote. A person must get into the booth, take a pen, and vote. Okay? So when the votes are going to be counted in, they'll be counted in, see them on the scoreboard, and then that will then be verified. The electronic scoreboard will be verified with the physical ballots. Okay? In order to guard against fraud. I mean, anywhere in the world where there's a democracy, people died. They actually died to attain this freedom. In world wars, and when there were other pandemic and so forth, actually people went to the booth and voted. Okay, so we don't need this excuse about coronavirus that people are now taking advantage of and saying that you can't physically go and vote. If you can go to the store and buy your groceries with your mask on, you surely can well vote. I mean, think of each and every polling station where we know all the time everybody have their own whatever precinct it is, or voting station. You'll have the police officers and so forth, and so far we do have an idea, in terms of stats, in terms of infection, in terms of uh, precautions ways which we can take in order for us to mitigate the infection of this communist virus. I mean, at polling station, obviously, would still be having a social distancing by then. No, I'm talking about the local elections of next year. So we don't have to have the situations where everybody's talking about voting digitally. And I think for anyone who's serious about being represented by their representatives, they must go out and go and vote. If people are not interested in voting, you have a certain number, millions of people who are not interested in voting, and you see that number. If that number goes and vote, it's in fact more number than the usual number of people that vote. You don't have to say log on to our computers and go vote. People must understand that it's a patriotic duty to go out and vote. You know. So anyway, my name is Mamuji, and thanks for watching the Mamuji Show. and see you soon. I'm out.